Landry, sitting to my right, is my husband. He's a super committed, amazing, awesome dad. We have 7 kids, ages 37 to 17. And what we know about Albert is that if he does a task, it is going to be done right. Brian Dennison, we've been friends with the Dennisons since 1994. That is 30 years, my friends. Big hand, hello. Brian has been my partner in crime for quite some time. We, separately or together with our spouses, are constantly cooking up some scheme or another. Brian and Lori have 7 kids as well, ages 34 to 14, 15. I was pretty close. What we know about Brian is that if he does a task, it will be done the fun way. We have Jake Snowden next. Welcome, Jake. Jake is a man on a mission, a family man to the core. Steady as she goes, Jake's the guy, and we all know this about him, who would be there for you no matter what you needed. Jake's got 6 kids, ages 3 to 14, and we would guess from that age range that you are busy. Then we have Phil LaRosse. Phil and his wife Marianne, who's been our coffee lady here, are salt of the earth, wonderful, amazing, big-hearted people with a love of mission and family life. They are musical. Bill is both singer and songwriter. And they are in the middle of things with little kids and big kids. And your wife tells me you're both a peacemaker and really curious in life. And I'm guessing right now you're curious about how this is all going to turn out. Next, we have my son, Francis Buklinski, who in real life is my son-in-law, but really he's my son. Francis was homeschooled himself, and he and his wife are now in the batter's box to be parents of 5 children. Their elder son is almost 8, and they have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, 1-year-old, and 1 in utero. Francis is a hard worker and tremendous cheerleader, both in family life and in his community. And we can assume with that age of children, you're tired. Yes, he says. Jacob Dennison, I've known Jacob since he was born. Jacob and Katrina are expecting their 4th child. Their other kids are 6, 3, and 1. Jacob is a man of many skills. Good with his hands and with his head, a Renaissance man, creative, thoughtful, generous, and we also assume you're tired. Okay, guys, so I have a lot of questions. Some of them are weird, but that's okay. So I'm going to stop.
Are we each supposed to answer?
I will direct. Okay, depending on the question, yeah. So the first one is, how can a dad working full-time hours effectively support his wife with homeschooling their children? What's his part in it all? So I'm thinking maybe we'll start, this might be, each of you could take a short answer on this, okay? What's your part in it all? What did it look like for you guys in the middle of it, and for you guys just starting out? What's your role in homeschooling?
Whatever my wife needs from me, that's my role. Support. Don't second guess, but support and encourage. Be there for her. Because, well, in our case, because Bonnie does all the homeschooling, like, technically, yeah, just be available. It's that simple.
One thing that I think I've been thinking a bit about lately is that in our situations where there's one breadwinner for the family, it's easy to kind of think that just happens. But I think it's probably the holiest thing that many men do with their lives is to give up so much of that, often in a stressful, difficult way that's not super enjoyable for the sake of their family. Right? So they're truly dying to themselves in order to provide that for their family. And that was always very, very meaningful to me. It made all the difference to get up and go to work in the day, to think of that was that purpose. So I think that's a really, really important and beautiful thing and often kind of overlooked. Otherwise, in my situation, like Albert's, Lori did most of the actual homeschooling, basically all the actual homeschooling. But I did the fun stuff. So that that also gave me something to look forward to too, as I got through my day at work to do some fun thing with my kids later.
Well, my answers won't be nearly as eloquent as Brian's. I think support, like Albert said, and logistics. You know, I'm at work. I support, I think, Christina with transportation, food, grocery shopping, food prep, things like that. Sort of things to bookend the day to help her out and make her day go a little smoother wherever I can.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to know what to add to what's been said. There's the practical side
We'll
of
go the other way next time. We'll start from the other.
Yeah, okay. There's the practical side, obviously, of working and allowing, you know, making a space that we can homeschool. I'm well aware that, well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I feel like my job, if we're, you know, talking about the two jobs that the parents do, my job is the quote-unquote easier one, even though it pays really well. And so one of the things that I try and do is make spaces for my wife to kind of, you know, have her own life too, to be able to get out of the house, to do other things with other moms or whatever she wants to do, because I am away a lot, and as you all know, homeschooling moms, you're not away a lot, you're at home a lot, and there's you know, there's something to be said for having access to time alone or with friends or other aspects of the community. So I guess that's one little part that I'm conscious of that I'm trying to do, other than the working and stuff. Other than that, we definitely talk about providing some support with the homeschooling. Like in our case, we've talked about me helping out, say, with like science projects or gym or you know, some kind of physical activity, which we talk about a lot. I don't know how well I do it, but yeah. Yeah. So that's a work in progress, but it's something we talk about. So we talk about if time is short on a certain aspect, like where I'm able to help out. I happen to have a job where I have a flex day once every 2 weeks, so that kind of adds a little bit of facet to how I might be able to help out with homeschooling, and I'll stop there.
I go to Costco. Yeah, so I think it's tough to see the day in, day out of my wife, putting in time with the kids, and, you know, I'll go to the office, maybe go to Costco, pick up, you know, the essentials, and then come back and feel great to be home. And, you know, it's been a long day with the kids and trying to homeschool with little ones. And yeah, I think I struggle with how do you do what you need to do to provide, and, you know, you want to create a culture and a space, and how do you do it so that everybody is taken care of, especially the person who's at home all day with the kids. And so, yeah, I go to Costco. You know, I work from home also for a bit too. So try to put children down for naps so that Mary has time to homeschool, you know, the two older ones, and then sub out later on, and she'll try to do something with our third youngest. But I don't know, I think it's a real challenge, and obviously we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's hard to say anything more, really, but I try and do good stuff to help too, like, you know, the shopping and putting the kids to bed for naps, and as our family's grown, I've definitely become extremely dependent on Grace. that I can seem to do what would otherwise seem impossible. So anybody who's not married, there's hope, I guess. But the homeschooling aspect, though, mainly besides the support of shopping and putting kids to bed and stuff like that, is mainly for me just theoretical. It's just talking to Katrina, talking about what we want to do, what our plans are, what and how and why, right? All these are really important when we're making such a distinct move away from regularity into something unknown. We have to figure out what and why we're doing it, and if it's possible, and if this big sacrifice is worth it and stuff, right? Because it is a big sacrifice. It's laying down your life. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of discussion we have about what curriculum, why, what we want homeschooling to look like for us, and what we can do to improve upon the previous generation. No offense or anything. The previous generation has made a huge stride. Like me and Francis here are second generation homeschoolers.
So that means we're going to do it better.
Well, we might.
Challenge accepted.
But they've broken the mold for us. They've stepped out of the ordinary much more than we will and have. So we have to do something to keep up with them. Right? And the only way is to improve upon it. So I think a lot of reflection on how we've been raised and discussion about that and what we can do differently to build a better world for our children and a more friendly world to Christianity particularly, right? To raise our kids to be saints. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you, Jacob. That's beautiful. Okay, if my next question is specifically to the older dads. It's you guys. Brandon, would you mind deleting? For the older dads, this is a great question, actually. After all the worries and concerns over the years regarding homeschooling, preparing your children for the world, which were valid concerns?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's by its nature, the homeschooling life is set apart. And in certain ways, there's the kind of game out there, right? So I worked in local government for 27 years, consultant before that. And it's a kind of a game, in certain ways, anyway, for sure. And we try and inspire our kids with seeking, the true, the good, and the beautiful. But the world out there isn't necessarily very much like that. And often, it's disappointing and confusing and not beautiful, ugly. And yet somehow you gotta make a living in that. And that was kind of a worry I had, and I know that it can be kind of hard for our young dads to go out there and make a living in that world. And that was a worry, and I see some of that, and it was difficult. But you got to do the right thing. You can't really give them beautiful aspirations and say, but that doesn't count most of the time. You got to do the right thing. You got to stick to the truth. You got to, even if it makes it much more harder, more difficult.
I'm gonna read that question again. It's,
For old dads, I just want to emphasize that. For old dads, after all the worries and concerns over the years regarding homeschooling, preparing your children for the world, which were valid concerns? Sorry, did you guys hear me? Did you hear this? Okay, sorry. For older dads, after all the worries and concerns over the years regarding homeschooling, preparing your children for the future, which were valid concerns?
so I'm trying to think of all the concerns that people have, and I guess there's a multitude of lists in the list, but what were my concerns? How are they going to fit in the world? How are they going to be normal? How are they going to, if they're not schooled like I was, like I obviously got schooled properly because I went to school, isn't that what we do? How are they going to function in the world? Like these are the concerns. None of those are valid. None of them, in my experience of the way I've seen it play out. In fact, they're turn them upside down. They're wrong thinking concerns. Because our number one concern that is valid is, what's our goal? We want to get our children to heaven. Ultimately, we gotta live in this world, like Ryan was saying. How do we do that? All these things we worry about fitting in. That's what the goal in worrying those invalid concerns is, about fitting in the world. We're not to be of the world, right? We are to be in the world, not conform to it. In Romans chapter 12, we all know that, be transformed by the renewal of your mind, and that's homeschooling does that. The school system does not. I mean, they can't. They do the best they can with their limitations. But homeschooling, the only valid concern is get your kid to heaven, whatever it takes, and it gives them the best chance, I think.
Thank you. Beautiful answers, guys. Okay, so I'm going to start with the mid-range over here, trying to decide if you're old or not. Kind of old, younger than me, so this is, a question that would be addressed to all the dads, but I'll start with you two. So what does being the head of the family mean to you? It's a hard one.
Yeah,
It's a hard question.
I'll go first because I can probably answer this pretty quickly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can just answer for all of us.
Yeah. No. My answer is probably going to differ from everybody. So I probably had, my mindset and everything growing up. Although I grew up Catholic, I was very individualistic in that I was pretty much like a loner, and so I kind of my dad even says I kind of raised myself in certain ways. So for better or worse, the whole idea of the husband is the head of the family is this traditional idea. Although I completely get it, it's not a strong formation in my mind. It just isn't. That's just not how I grew up. And so I approach my role as a husband and a father, the best that I can, which will differ from everybody in some way. But you know what? Honestly, I can't say that I just see myself as the head of our family. I see us as a partnership, and I know that doesn't really conform to the tradition here, but that is the honest truth, and so I'll just say that.
Maybe that's because we both have strong women for wives.
Well said.
That's a tough one. If I had to summarize it, I think the way that I approach it is really like a tender disciplinarian, I suppose. Obviously, fulfilling that typical male role model. As it was displayed for me, with my dad, I think the way that it was done was beautiful. He was just very much like that. He was very much a disciplinarian. He was very much an authority in the house, but he also was very compassionate and tender and loving at the same time. And I just try and be like that.
Thanks, Jake. That's good. So maybe you can pass that down to the younger dads. And so I'll repeat the question just in case. So what does being the head of the family mean to you?
Go for it, Jake.
That's a touchy area, I guess, because you don't want to offend anybody by inferring any differences that have negative,
You're waffling, Jacob. Just get on.
What's that?
You're waffling. Get on with your answer.
But there is a distinction, and I think it's fairly clear, Ephesians and many other places in the Bible where it refers to the husband and man being head over the wife. And that's, I think, what I have to strive for, at least. I have to find what that means through practice, and I think I'm naturally a little more hesitant and a little less assertive than some. And so I have to, I think, kind of push in the opposite area to become more assertive, more of a rock that my wife and family can depend upon, where I can make calls, not without consultation, but where I can lead the family, lead them into the right way. Like, I think one of the best role models, of course, is St. Joseph, who led his family all over the place. It was crazy, right? Here and there and everywhere, based on what, he thought the calling of God was, and he had an angel to help, but we do too. So, yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to do, I guess, is become that head. And I think the analogy is pretty straightforward, really. What is a head, right? We all know what a head is, and it's different than the rest of the body. Different than the rest of the body, but not superior. And it also says that in the Bible. So I think just own your role and become the head, and be a good head.
Thank you.
That's it.
You started waffling and ended on a solid note.
I told you I'm trying.
Well, whatever they say about the head, the wife is the neck and the neck turns the head. So yeah, so I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about this recently. So when Mary and I first got married, I think I had this understanding that, and actually similar to yours there, Phil. I really struggled with the idea of the man being the head, the one who wears the pants in the house, the one who, has the authority. And I thought, that's not me. I want to be a partnership. I want to be equal. Everything's equal. All the responsibility in the household is equal. And which I think is a really good idea. And I think it's coming from a really good place. But I think it can lead into areas of confusion. I think Father Ripperger, who's this awesome monk dude, talks about taking responsibility, and actually so does Jordan Peterson. But they talk about how, in order to gain identity, you need to take on responsibility. That's how you find your identity in this world. If you don't take on responsibility and you live in your parents' basement for the rest of your life, you're not going to be anyone, and you're not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to do anything. And so, I think what it means to be the head of the family is not to have this authority over people and be tyrannical, but it's to take on the responsibility of the duties in the house. Everything at the end of the day is your responsibility. Getting your family to heaven, caring for your spouse, caring for your children, overseeing everything. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility. You have a teammate, you have a helper, you have someone who's equal to you, who's not under you. It's your responsibility, though, to lead them in prayer. Someone needs to take that leadership. And if no one takes it up, if no one takes on that responsibility, it doesn't happen. And I think it's something where men I think it's men's responsibility to take on that responsibility. I think men are designed for it. And I think women can take it up. But I think that men were designed for it. And so I think anyways, for me, going back to the question, it's how do you take on that responsibility? It seems overwhelming to think of all the responsibilities in a household. How do you take that all on, right? And so anyways, that's what being the head for me is nowadays. It's just taking on extreme responsibility for everything. And how do you work together to make it happen? Something like that.
Thanks, Francis. That's great. So, Brian and Albert, do you guys want to take a crack at that? And then
I guess it's only fair since we got to answer early before. The one thing that I think, women and men are differently gifted broadly. Some things overlap it, but there are differences in a variety of things. And I think one of the things that we guys this is a double-edged sword. So we're pretty focused. We can focus in a way. So, like it's that ability to see that long term, to see that goal. It's that mountaintop that we're trying to get to. And I think women are more strongly gifted in dealing with many things at once. Baby crying, the kettle boiling over, somebody phoning in, or the doorbell ringing all at the same time. And for at least me anyway, through all my years of family life, I'm continually thinking, one thing at a time. Just give me one thing. I'll move to any number of things, but just one at a time, please. And but that same brain that wants things lined up that way has that focus, that long-term focus. And I think that's the thing that in the dynamics of our family life that I as a dad can bring about in the family is this kind of long-term goal. Like, where are we going? Where are we trying to get to? What's our vision? Like, what's our mountaintop that we're trying to climb? And I think that's broadly a more male-gifted thing. And I think that's one of the things that God intends for married life.
So there's a war going on, and it's spiritual. There's nothing Satan wants more than to break up our families. And as the head of the family, I think our number one job as a father and husband is spiritual. It's protection. Prayer, and prayer. The rosary has so much power. We don't know how much power it has. Praying and praying and praying. Jesus told this parable about keep going to the Father, pray, keep asking, keep asking, keep asking. So many times I just pray and pray and pray, and I don't know why I'm praying. I guess because I have to. And you pray, and there's that thing you need to pray for. It's of course never gonna happen, but I gotta keep praying anyway. And a couple weeks goes by, and you've been praying for months and months, and you look back and think, hey, that thing happened. That person or whatever I've been praying for, like, they're healed or they have peace, and whatever I've been praying. How did that? Oh, yeah, I've been praying. It must have something to do with it. We just, the power of prayer, we don't give it enough credence. Our prayers are answered and we don't see it because we're so busy and we carry on. So as the head of the house, I think my number one duty has been bringing the faith in the home and bringing the education, the knowledge, talking about the Lord, talking about apologetics with my children, my family at the dinner table, just, immersing them in it as much as I can. I think that's my primary role as like priest of the home. It's connected. It's nothing to do with macho man who teaches his kids to be tough. No. You're tough. When you give it all to the Lord, He fights for you. You can never be stronger if you do that. Your family will never be stronger if you do that.
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of rapid-fire questions because I have quite a lot of questions here. So I think I'm just going to send this one to you, Jake. This is a weird question, but whatever. At what point is a minivan or equivalent necessary?
Sorry, what was that?
At what point is a minivan or equivalent necessary? Yeah. At what point?
Sooner than you think.
What's that?
Sooner than you think.
Sooner than
I remember distinctly resisting for a number of years. We went to Florida. We ended up renting one on a trip. And I thought, why did we not already have this? I just remember that point very vividly in my mind. So as soon as possible. One kid, I don't care. Get a minivan.
Anyone else want to say
Completely
that?
double that, or what's the expression? Second that.
I second that. Okay, good. I don't think everybody needs to answer that. When you run out of seats, that's, one option. Okay. I'm going to ask you guys which of you would like to answer this. You younger guys. Actually, it might just be for you two, okay? It might just be for you two. There's a thought that homeschoolers are weird. What is that all about, and how do you raise not weird kids? So, your kids are small, so they're all weird. So maybe you four can answer that. We'll do a bit rapid fire, like sort of one sentence. I'd like to get through a couple questions so that we don't run. I'd like to address all of these because they're great questions.
Yeah, I think in the back of my mind, that was probably one of my, even if it wasn't like so conscious, it was probably one of the biggest concerns I had was like, am I putting my kids in some position of becoming weird because we're doing this? I will say this: one of the biggest reasons that that I felt completely into the idea of homeschooling was meeting these families, and you know,
We're weird.
well, yeah, but there's a weird that is admirable, and then there's the weird of like, you know, that people have in their heads when they think of the stereotype of homeschoolers, right? And I think that's what was dispelled for me meeting the community here and just understanding, like, they're just people, and the socialization and all that stuff, kind of like what Albert says, like, a lot of the concerns are just not founded. And not even because, you know, you just need to focus on getting to heaven, but because you're giving them everything that they actually need. And especially if you're lucky enough to have a community as strong as this one, you have so many opportunities for the children to socialize not only with their peers, but with younger, older, adults, everybody. And to me, that produces somebody who's more well-rounded than maybe if you're just in a group of your own peers every day for, like, you know, 5 days a week. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to address the weird question?
So it occurs to me that when I look at the world about us, it's a world I want to be weird from. I don't want to. If that's weird, then, you know, like, I look around me, I look at everybody here, and you go, okay, if we're all weird, then God's weird. And that's where I want to be. I don't want to be on the other side. That's not
God is weird.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's another weird question. Talking obviously from a homeschooler. What qualities should a young single woman be looking for in a prospective husband? I don't even know why you guys get to be the experts on this.
Go home with this fella you're interested in and observe how he treats his mother.
Yes.
Very good answer. You know, for me, I thought of that question when my 3 young men encountered a young woman in their lives, and they were now heading towards marriage. I thought, so what is it that these guys of mine would offer primarily to these young women? Why would they want to marry this guy? Especially from a parent's point of view, we parents tend to see all the problems and issues and everything else with our kids, and kind of hard to be convinced of their better qualities. But the thing that really occurred to me with all 3 of these guys that was an outstanding feature for sure is that each of them would die for their family. Each of them would. Whether that's little dribs and drabs over years of work, or whether that's a sudden cataclysmic event. But they would go right to the front line. And I thought, that's a critical thing.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to answer that?
I'm still at that point in my life where that's just not going to happen. So.
So I have 3 daughters and 1 son. So I think about, you know, how are they going to find a good man a lot when they're at that age. So one of
Which, by the way, they're not, correct, Phil? They're not at that age.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Ayla.
eventually, right? One of the most important things to me, like, I'm a fairly unfocused person. I know you talked about focus, Brian, but I'm just like head in the clouds kind of person, and so I don't formulate a lot of these ideas all the time. But one of the ones I have been successful in formulating about like what I want to instill in my children is just how to be like true human beings, like true to yourself, true to others, to not present so much a facade, but to learn to grow into yourself so that you can be sincere and be comfortable in that sincerity. And so I would hope that that comes with the ability to seek that out, or the desire to seek that out in others. And so whether it's a friend or a possible future husband, that's one of the biggest things, because then if you're finding somebody like that, then you really do know what you're getting, right? And you know, both from your peers and from people that you look up to, you have qualities that you know that are good. I mean, once again, we're lucky enough to have a really solid community here of people to draw inspiration from, whether it's men or women or
Weird people.
weird people, right? So I guess that would be the biggest thing for me is looking for that sincerity and somebody who just like they are a real person, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel fairly unqualified. I only have one example of this, which is myself. And I was married very young. I don't know how young, but quite young. And I'm still quite young. So I hear a lot that, you have to find this man that has all these qualities set out already, like a good solid man. And of course, that's what you want, right? Of course. But at the same time, you have to sacrifice a certain amount of qualities that he has for qualities that he could possess in the future. Because, I don't know, if you marry somebody as young as me,
Not that many qualities.
it's just a blank slate, right? So it's, I don't know, it's tricky. I'm glad I'm not in that position of having to pick a young man. I'm just very grateful. I think that's all. It's just a tricky place. A balance,
Thank you. Do you want to take that, Francis, or no?
Oh, just quickly, I think it'd be some subtle things that I'd look for, but are they reading Jordan Peterson? Are they going to Sunday church? Are they out of their parents' house and working? And if they're doing these things, that's maybe some good feelings.
That's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so another weird question. How do you keep up with your swing dancing with a family? You can probably answer that. Okay, well, ballroom dancing would apply, I'm sure. You can answer that. How do you keep up with your swing dancing with a family? Jake is just so confused. He's just like, I don't even know what to do with this mic now.
I don't know. Well, there's a season for everything. When me and Bonnie started ballroom dancing before Lucy came along, and she was our, difficult child, we had to stop taking lessons. And we stopped ballroom dancing for several years until we could get past this phase in our life. And we had some, we had a gap where things were pretty smooth. Hey, why don't we take some more lessons? And that would last for a couple of years. We'd go to some ballroom dances and enjoy that. And another season comes along where we have to just step away for several more years. And just, it comes and goes. It's just wave and, ebb and flow. So it's just bide your time.
Francis, how do you keep up with swing dancing?
Well, it's not so much me now, it's Aria. So I think what used to be a beautiful thing that Mary and I would do when we were dating, going to dances and, swing in Victoria and whatnot, has now turned into family kitchen dance sessions. And it's amazing, you know, Edwin and Aria are now swing dancing. They know how to do some basic moves, and you know, often on a weekly basis, usually on Friday night, we'll turn on the tunes and, you know, there'll be dancing going on. Marinelle will be doing a little dancing, but mostly it's dancing with the kids, and it's awesome. And it's turned into a family event now.
Nice. Fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to direct this at, I lost my question. At you younger, I use the term loosely, you younger four dads, okay, not the old dads, clearly the old dads. Because we're really in a sense past those years, right? So how do you nurture and support your wives when they're discouraged with homeschooling? It's a really, really good question. How do you nurture and support your wives when they are discouraged with homeschooling? We've talked about some of the things that you do, either to support the family, but specifically if they're feeling low about it, what has been helpful?
So one thing just right off the bat is with any kind of discouragement, just hearing them out and making time for them to kind of vent, and a certain amount of just like listening without judging, which is not always easy to do if you're also, you know, stressed or whatever, and you have your own issues. But it's a hugely valuable thing, I think, to create space for somebody to just be able to share their discouragements, whether the end of that is just hearing them and supporting them by being there, or, you know, if you're, I think one's natural inclination sometimes in that situation is to try and fix it, when that isn't necessarily the best thing to try and do, rather than just to be there and be supportive. In that you're giving all of your time in that moment to them, and you're not trying to rush it along or you know, even negate the things they're saying, like, oh no, don't say that, or, you know, it's often like, I mean, I'm totally speaking from personal experience. It's like you don't want the person to feel those things, and so sometimes you just outright negate it before them, which is not the right thing to do, right? Where you say, oh, don't say that, or don't think that, when, you know, the saying and the thinking of it is not the bad thing. It's actually helpful, right, to talk about it, and so that, yeah, to me, I guess that's like the obvious first step in helping, is just to be there for them, to make time for them, and to go from there, I guess. Yeah. So step one.
But how do you fix it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm not exactly coming at this from any place of authority, but I would say, yeah, don't be Mr. Fix-It. And maybe giving them some space to be heard, to also remove themselves from the situation a bit, get support from the people in their peer group, to actually get some time away from home, to get some perspective as well. Yeah, good set of ears.
Well, I am very new at this, obviously, so I don't have any great wisdom. These older fellows have much more wisdom than I do. Youngish fellows. But I would say what I've generally done is to sort of give her a break is kind of remind her that the goal of homeschooling is not the education, in my opinion at least. I don't really give two hoots if my child is educated. If they get to heaven, fine, then that's what's important, right? So if you need to take a break from the education aspect to love them and remember who they are and what you're trying to do, I think that's totally reasonable. I think you can make that last until you feel, and they feel, comfortable and confident to enter into the more educational element of it. If you have to kind of back off and then ease back in, sounds fine to me.
Yeah, so not a whole lot of wisdom. This is something we're struggling with. It's how do you homeschool in the midst of chaos? And it's tough. There must be a way. That's about it.
Sorry? That's it? Oh, did you ask? Okay, sorry. I was busy drinking my juice. I was in orange juice world. I was just ignoring you. Okay. So for the two dads, the two old dads, how do you raise your boys to be gentlemen? Do you even do that? What's it? I know, what's in the orange juices? No, it's fine. Orange juice is just orange juice. How do you raise your boys to be gentlemen? Yeah.
Well, I think the single answer to that is to be a gentleman yourself. That's what they're going to see. Words are, with kids, it goes in one side out the other. We can say things 1,000, 10,000 times, and it doesn't stick unless they see it. And they know right away. Our kids know in an instant if we're being hypocritical or not. And it's not what you say, it's what you do. And you have to show that example. And I think primarily, the main thing they're going to see is how you treat their mother or your wife. And whether you do that in a gentlemanly, respectful way or not, they're going to know, and it's going to set the tone for the rest of their lives. And I think that's the key.
The only thing I can add to that is get them to watch some great BBC series television. That's it. No, they're all gentlemen on those shows, so that's fine. No, I can't say any more than Brian nailed it. That's it. It's by example.
So there's a question here. I'm going to read the whole question out, but I think we've already addressed the first part of it. But the second part, I think, is a good question. What challenges do you experience being the spiritual head of your household? So we've talked a lot about that. You'll answer that really well. But how have your own faith struggles affected your marriage and fathering? Right? So you don't all have to answer this, but if you have something in particular you'd like to share, that would be helpful because we all struggle.
That needs some thought. that's
Do you want to come back to it?
It's a big question. But I will say one thing just leaps to my mind a little bit. And maybe this is, it's endlessly fascinating to me, everybody's walk with God. Like everybody's different. Everybody has their path. Everybody has these nuances, some things that are terribly important, others that aren't, and it's all different. And so it's really hard for me to know whether, my particular experiences would be shared by others or not. I'm sure some, but I would say the thing that would occur to me the most, or that would be a thing that I would struggle with, that I have some difficulty in sharing with my family, is sort of a freshness. Lots like say night prayers or whatever, or different things we do. I think it's really important to do that, so we do it every night. A lot of it gets to be, when you've been doing it for years and years and years, it's very hard for it to be fresh. It's very hard for it not to be rote, or just a thing you're going through and your heart's not in it, right? And I think that's a thing that maybe everybody deals with to a certain extent. I don't know, but at least for me, that's a thing. And I feel it. I feel the need to be that good example for my family, and to have that vitality in my faith that they see. And and it's not always like that. And sometimes I'm tired, or all the things that happen, all the human things. And that's I would say would be at least for me anyway, the trickiest bit. Even now, there's no simple, just do this, right? At least for me anyway. So yeah.
Anyone else want to?
Yeah. Okay.
Do
So.
you want me to restate the question?
No, I think I got the question. I would say that I think during so when all the scandal came out about the residential schools and COVID was starting up, it was around 2020. I think there was a lot of questions in my mind about the church, and I found that it was essentially it's just when prayer is dropped and you no longer are bringing your family together. Neither one of you are. Like there's not a prayer element to the family. Everything just seems off. And after that period of time where we asked all the questions and got some good answers, and we took up our faith more seriously. We started trying to pray again. And that brought back a lot of order in the midst of chaos. And so I'd say that, how it's affected, how my faith has affected the performance of my marriage or something like that, or whatever the question was exactly. But essentially, if you can cling to Our Lady, St. Joseph, to prayer, family life can make a lot more sense, especially if you're having a big family, especially if you're trying to homeschool and do it all. I think prayer is essential to achieve something great.
Thank you. Beautiful. Anyone else?
Just
Should we move closer?
try and be brief. Flip side to what Brian was saying, where you're not doing enough. Maybe you're doing too much. And you're trying, like Bonnie introduced me as the guy who does things that are going to be right. Okay, so when we got together, we weren't practicing Catholics. Bonnie's a convert. I'm cradle Catholic. Left my faith that I never knew because it was never taught to me. We came back together. We journeyed as adults. And so when I started learning about a true Catholic church, I couldn't believe it. And I wanted to embrace it entirely. And as we started having children, we've got to pray together as a family. We got to do it right. We got to pray the rosary together. We got to do it every decade. We got to get it all right. Every kids have to be quiet. And I had to learn, and I learned pretty quick. Like that doesn't work. And I'm sure you all know this, but it's worth just talking about. I had to step back, and eventually, you find your way in a little bit of prayer every night, as long as it's consistent, right? You can pray one Hail Mary with the family gathered together, maybe light a candle. That's a lot. Mother Teresa said, one child saying a Hail Mary has changed the world forever. One Hail Mary from a child. Think about that. We try and overdo it. We don't have to. Our Lord knows our heart. He knows our effort. That's really what matters, right? And we can't just earn it. Anyway, that's my point.
Thank you. That's lovely. Okay, I'll take a little lighter question now. I have a couple of light ones. What would you say are the best reasons to, whoever would like to answer this, what would you say are the best reasons to not homeschool? Maybe the better question, if you're going to reframe the question a little bit, what would have been the reasons if you chose not to homeschool? Because obviously most people are not just like, yeah, I'm going to homeschool from the day your kids are born. It's a process. So what would the reasons might have been for you to not homeschool if you had made a different choice?
I think one of the main reasons is if you don't want to. Right? I mean, just practically, right? Like, I don't know, probably most people in the world don't feel compelled to homeschool, so it's probably not a problem with them. The default is probably to send your kids to like a public school or whatever. At least that's kind of how I grew up. But it is like getting married or choosing to have kids. It's a huge undertaking. It's a vocation in and of itself, and not a commitment to be taken lightly. And I say this as the observer. But it's a huge thing, and if you know, your heart should be in it to some extent, right? Even if it is something that you're learning and growing while you're doing it. I think there's a lot of great reasons to homeschool, but yeah, like I mean, other than the practical things of if you just can't maybe afford to or something, depending on your situation, to have one person at home, then yeah, it would be the like heart commitment of being there and like seeing that kind of through.
Thanks, Phil. Best reason to not homeschool. Anyone else want to take that? To not homeschool, or reframing the question, when you were deciding to homeschool, what were the reasons that were appealing to not homeschool? What were you weighing out in your mind?
Yeah, so I'd say community is very important, and I don't know if it's essential. I mean, I think it is. But if there's not a strong homeschooling community and you're trying to do it alone and your family's isolated, I don't know if that's going to be the healthiest thing for the child. My younger brother, Dominic, so I'm from a family of 14. We all, well, most of us were homeschooled. A couple at the beginning were not. And then at the end, Dominic went to high school. And I think it was a good call because he was home alone. All the siblings had left. There wasn't a strong, vibrant homeschooling community by the time he was in high school. And so he went to high school. And he loved it. There were sports, there were organized events, and there was a lot of great things in the school. And he had a good mindset on his shoulders, right? He was raised at home, and yeah. So I don't think homeschooling is always the answer. I think there has to be some things in place for it to make sense. That's my sense on that.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Yeah.
It is one thing that I have come across. Some other examples, not that I'm aware of in our little Catholic world here, but anyway, certainly one example to me of a Protestant family we knew in Cobble Hill here who did a lot of things with us. But I know that their 3 kids, grew up and had a significant resentment to their parents for homeschooling, and they felt that they missed out. That was the thing. And it depends, I guess, on what it is that you would hope to be doing instead, or what you think regular school life would bring you. I think there's certainly a grass is greener kind of thing there to an extent. And we imagine, if we see movies of high school, they seem they're having tons of fun. It's not necessarily like that at all. But I think that's where community is really important. I think it's really important to, as much as possible within that community, to have special things happen that young people get excited about in one way or another. And it can be all kinds of ways. I mean, a bunch of our young people in recent times have been really interested in enjoying swing dancing. And they actually go down to Victoria and take lessons, and they go to the dances there and different things like that. And even they were doing a little session just in the break time here. There was a circle of them doing some swing dance moves and stuff like that. And that's an example of something they get excited about, right? And you need to have, opportunities of that sort. If it's that, there's 1,000 different possibilities, but that's just one example. I think that's something that, especially as they get older and they're starting to look outside the immediate family and they're looking at the world around them. And I think it's really important to have that element. And if you can't develop it in some way or other, that would be more of a problem. Or it could be anyway. Depends on the kids too, to an extent, individual persons. But yeah.
I really would, just based on that, if you could share some Father Hardin commentary that when we were traveling down here, that would dovetail nicely with this.
Catherine Eames last night mentioned Father Hardin, and there was this book that we went to one of the conferences earlier on in Seattle. I found this book, and it was called, I think the title of the book was "Only Heroic Catholic Families Will Survive," and that's a quote from Father Hardin. And it's a series of essays in this book. Father Hardin wrote one of them, and what stood out for me in the comment he made is that heroic Catholic families, in order to survive, will have to travel long distances to be with other heroic Catholic families and spend time with them. And that just hit me like, yes, we need that. And we were living in the News Bay then, and this Catholic community, homeschool community, was starting to get going here in Cobble Hill. And this guy here kept phoning us and bugging us. Why don't you come to gym night? No, we have a lot of good Protestant homeschool friends we're hanging out with. And one day Bonnie said, "We gotta get this guy off our back. Like, we gotta go to, we'll go join him." Okay, just this weekend, and that was it. And we've been coming back ever since. But it was necessary for our family to survive, okay, in this, to achieve what we wanted to for our family.
Sure.
Thing. So critical to that decision was Albert taking on a long commute every day for years and years and years in order to provide that for his family. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I was inspired by that comment from Father Hardin. Would I have done that? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe we would have never moved here. But I have no regrets. Okay.
So I just want to say that this question, sorry, I can't find, did you delete it already? Question? The previous one? The one they were just, so what's the best reason to not homeschool? They didn't answer very well. Because you primarily shared the reasons that they would homeschool. A couple of things came up, but obviously you guys maybe are not the best people to ask that question of, but it also speaks to just the process that you've gone through to make the life decisions that you made, homeschooling being one of them. So they're heroes, right? So a few more questions. What, in your opinion, can we do as families to encourage discernment and vocations to the priesthood? Discernment to the priesthood. You know the guys who sing Mass for us.
Well, me and Brian both have a number of boys, and we're quite unsuccessful in that department. So, yeah. Well, Abel's not married yet either. So. Or Noah.
Yeah, Abel.
But I'm not allowed to talk about it with them. Shh,
Sorry, Rebecca.
I think it just has to be one of those things that's live in your family life. It's just a thing that's talked about. I think you can't push too hard, but that it has to be there. And a big part of that too, I think I've heard lots of places and stuff, is that priests are seen to be very. The kids see how important the priesthood is to your parents and to family life, right? They have to see that, and that is a beautiful, beautiful life to have and to pursue. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen at all. Right?
How do you talk about it?
It's just there. It's just the thing that comes up, right? You hear little bits and pieces, and you chat about stuff, and it's just around. It's like lots of things are, right? They're just kind of, it's like the lives of saints or something. Like you can say nothing about saints, or you can say, oh, Saint Teresa of Avila said this, and Saint Augustine, did this thing, and this saint did that thing, and it's just live. It's like talking about other families or other things or whatever things you might talk about, but you talk about the priesthood as well, or you do prayers for priests. In our night prayers, we have a few different priesthood or prayers for priests. And some of them are quite touching, actually. They're very meaningful, and I'm always touched when we do them. So that's part of it, I think, and that there's, that we say, if we hear a good homily, we might talk about that homily a bit and say, today Father said this and this and this, and that might be out a little bit. I would say is just how that's done. I don't know if there's any. It's not formulaic. It's just kind of a thing that's out there.
I feel like the heart of his question really is what can we do as families to encourage discernment, right?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to touch on. I mean, God calls, we don't send. So if there's a vocation, it's coming from God. And maybe none of your sons have a vocation to priesthood. Maybe they're all called to marriage. And that's exciting too. and you know, in God's time, like, we need a lot of good, holy marriages so that we can have a lot of holy families. They have to build up the community. And then maybe God's calling the next generation. We're going to see a whole wave of priests. We don't know. We just have to trust them. We just have to keep helping them to discern and talk about God's calling you to something. It's either this or that. Pray about it, think about it, you know, and help them find the ways to discern that. Like for years we took our families up to Westminster Abbey. It's the monastery up in Mission, BC. And you can go stay there for a weekend with your family, and there's monks everywhere. You can pray with them in the church, and you're surrounded, you know, you're eating in their dining hall, and it's reality, and they see it, and that's the sort of thing we did. And
Yeah, something that I noticed is we were at the Landry's house for dinner, and Father Harrison was there, and Edwin told Father that he was making his first confession and how he was scared about it. And Father said, oh yeah, well, I was scared about mine, and it definitely made me start thinking about how priests are, you know, like parish priests, are so remote. You know, you see them on Sundays, and if you go to daily mass, okay, probably not daily mass now, maybe just Sundays, and you know, you don't really see them a whole lot as a child. I sure did not growing up. But I can't help but feel that parish priests should be invited into the home more, you know, and so that your sons can talk to them about making their first confession, so that your sons can ask them questions and just see that these are really cool people. They're not just priests, and not that they're just priests, but it's not so far away, that it's close, and that priests have a place in your home, a place in your family, something like that.
No, it's absolutely right. It's perfect.
Yeah, I would say, just adding to what Francis said, just thinking about the other day actually, is that we as fathers are secular fathers of our children, and so the natural consequence is for them to follow in our footsteps, right? As secular fathers. So if you're a good father, they'll want to be good fathers too, right? And so there's only so much I think you can do to encourage vocations to the priesthood, because what you're encouraging most by your example is, you know, encouraging to matrimony, a good marriage, hopefully. And so I think it's like, I'm not saying it's the responsibility of priests necessarily to do this. I don't know, but I think there's a certain element of adoption that's necessary to, like, for the priest to adopt your son as his own son, kind of, so that he can learn from him what it is to be a different kind of father. Because otherwise they have to make that leap on their own without a concrete example. They have to make the move from the world that they know into a world of spiritual, you know, ambiguity. That's not the word. Ambiguity? Ambiguity. That they don't know about. It's mysterious, and how can you expect somebody to make that leap? Obviously, with grace, anything is possible. But if they have a real example, like we need in Jesus Christ, is that a flesh and blood example is what we need to make that leap. Otherwise, it's a mystery until it's revealed to us what it means to be a father in that way. And I think the only way is to know them personally.
Yeah, because I'm not going to wake up in the morning and say, okay, Edwin, you know, good morning, and he's like, what's for breakfast? And I'll say, have you thought of being a priest today? Like, that's obviously not the way. I think, and this is something that you know what I just said before, but I think we need to start inviting priests into our home more. They need to be showing up for the birthday parties. They need to feel like part of the family, so that the sons can see that example and be adopted by that father.
Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to ask the question, and then I'm going to leave you to it for a minute because I have to run in and turn some ovens on. So I'll be gone for a moment. But I think you should each take a crack at this, because I think you guys all do this. How do you model strength with humility to your family? So do you want to start here? No.
Can you repeat the question?
How do you model strength with humility to your family? Model strength with humility.
Saying I'm sorry when you get it wrong.
you can do, I think, is look to examples and pray, because you need help for that. That's an impossible job. That's multitasking, and men don't do that.
There is no humility, only strength.
No, I think you have to just pray for that. It's something you have to learn, and I don't know it. I don't know. You just have to try. Sorry.
Yeah, I think what Jake said about sorry is really important. Yeah, so here's a little story, but where's my beer? Oh, sir, sorry. Bartender. Okay, so my father, when he was growing up, he had a difficult upbringing, as a lot of his generation did, because they were coming out of a war. There's a lot of trauma, and so there's a lot of issues. My father's father never said sorry to my father, and so my father never really said sorry when I was growing up, which was really, really hard. And so that's something that I've taken into my life, where, well, I don't want to say sorry. I want to always be in the right. I always want to have the answer. And that's definitely not the way to be. Your children need to see you owning your wrongs, taking that responsibility, and saying sorry. Because if you don't, well, I think they'll end up going down crazy rabbit holes, and they may never see the light of day. But also praying in the morning. If your children can see you getting up and kneeling in front of your home altar, whatever you have there, and it can be short, that's very powerful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Who has not yet answered this?
So strength with humility. I think like having a goal of growing in your humility is always good, because I think if you are seeking to be humble, then modeling strength in a humble way will probably come naturally. I wish I knew, like, the person asking the question, like, if they elaborated on it more, because I'm sure there's more behind it.
So yeah, I would guess so. It's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, so being able to say sorry, that's a great model of both, I think, at the same time. I think being able to show, like, a steadfastness in when times are hard, because there's obviously with families, there's so much going on. Things are going to come up when you're not ready for them, or you don't want them to be happening, and there's the kind of fight or flight response, and being able to not give in to any kind of flight response, I guess, is showing strength. And the way that you do that humbly, I guess, to show your steadfastness in a way that is not with your pride forefront, to show it as just a matter of course, maybe. That's, I don't know, that's getting a little wordy, but that's kind of what comes to me.
I think I'm going to look at the question a little differently. I'm wondering if the intent was, in humility looks weak, right? We don't want to drop our guard and be humble, because that shows weakness. And if that's the intent of the question, like, how do you get strength when you're looking so pathetic? If that's the intent, I would say.
I don't think so.
Well, if it is, I'm just going to say that it's I think we all know what humility looks like. It's in humility that we get strength. That's where we are strong. In pride, we are weak. That's all I would say.
Anyone else?
I'll just add, like, as you were saying that, it definitely came to me that we have a really good model of humility and strength in Jesus, right? Like, to look at the times when he was almost like in his most human and most down, the way that he showed strength, right? The way that he gave over his will to God, to his Father, and yeah, I don't know. There's a lot in that, or even in the Psalms, right, where there's all this like vulnerability on display, and tearing your clothes, and all these images of just being so destitute, and turning to God in those times. I guess that's like a completely different way to answer the question, but as you were talking, that's kind of what came to me too. Is we have all these models in Scripture of strength and humility being together. And a lot of that comes down to giving over to God, right?
Thank you, yes.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. Okay, I'm going to run through a couple of questions here in a slightly dismissive way. Style advice for young dads, everyone but Jacob. So we'll... I don't know why, because you've already nailed it, or because you don't have any, I don't know why. So anyway, we're not even going to answer that question. We're not going to dignify that question with an answer. How do you balance work and homeschool your children? I'm assuming this is directed at dads, whoever put it in there directed at dads, and we've sort of already addressed that, our work life and our home life. So moving right along. Looking back, or currently, if you could do something different in your homeschooling career, what would it be? That to me seems like a question directed at the primary homeschooler, which would be typically the mom. Was that question meant for moms? Give me a thumbs up if that was not meant for the dad's panel. I don't know. Meant for the dad's panel? Okay. If you could, so looking back currently, if you could do something differently in your homeschooling career, what would it be? So I sense that homeschooling and raising your family, being a father, are synonymous in this case, right? So you don't all have to answer that, but yeah, whoever would like to. So, I mean, obviously, Jacob and Francis, you aren't old enough to look back. So maybe directed at you two, that would be, if either of you have something to say, go ahead.
It's a really, really hard question, actually. Really, really hard. The thing is that, our kids they're not us, they're them. And they're all different one from another. So there's no single like, oh, just be more like this, or just be more like that, or do more of this and less of that, because they're all different. And, and you're just trying to figure them out as you go. I'm still trying to figure out my wife. I'm still trying to figure out me. There's this journey, and it doesn't just stop, right? And it's really tricky to be able to kind of sum up a single thing or a couple things that are, this was a big mistake, or we wish you did more like this and more like that. And it's really hard to know even. One of our sons just had a conversation with Lori, and he, I don't want to give it away exactly, but so he's got a bit of a discipline problem, kind of like it's self-discipline, getting things done, kind of thing. And at first, when he left home, he was pretty resentful that we didn't kind of let him fail more, right? And he thought that we should have let him fail more. And that's a hard thing. Would that have been best? Like at the end of his high school career, Lori heroically went through this period of a number of months of practically 24/7 pushing him through to graduation. And he got it done, but it was this giant effort for months. And so for a period of time after he was on his own, he said, you should have just let me fail. Because then I would have learned, right? Then I would have learned to do that myself instead of relying on you. And he felt kind of resentful about that. But in this recent conversation, he said, I don't feel that way anymore. And, I'm trying to figure out myself. I don't really understand myself fully, and I don't know why you know, that sort of pattern has come up a lot. And he doesn't like it, but just like all of us, we've all got our patterns that we're struggling with, right? So, you know, to think, oh, what should we have done? Like, that's really hard to imagine. Right?
Because you're still doing it, in
Yeah,
a sense, yeah.
and he's still doing it. It's so complex, right? It's just so complex. There's no equation, there's no simple formula. Oh, here we go!
Phil's nailing it.
If only I knew you when I was playing.
No, I mean, I could probably go on and on about my limitations. So it's hard to, like, I want to answer this question, but I want to answer it in a way that, like, I hope it's helpful to somebody else and not just me spilling, like, all the beans on my limitations and regrets. But, yeah, exactly. So,
This is Phil's therapy.
okay, so I'll say two things if I can remember them. One is managing expectations, and that is like not like being aware enough. And this is tough, right? Because it's almost like I'm saying, like, yeah, if I was more perfect, things would have been better. But I am, you know, I just am the person I am. But if I had known this, maybe if I could have given myself advice or something, maybe things would have been different. Or maybe I just would have been exactly the same. But, you know, coming home, like going to work, coming home, when you're at work, you have a lot of things on your mind to do with work. When you come home, it's not easy always to shed those from your mind. And so in a way you have sort of a full mind already, and coming home you might have this like maybe hanging on from your no kid life, like previous life, where you come home from work and you have space, right? You have quiet if you want it, music if you want it. You can just think about yourself, or if, you know, like your spouse or whatever. But you don't do that. You come home into maybe a chaotic situation, right? You got multiple life forms in your house with, like, you know, all these desires, and of course they want to spend time with you. They want to see you. They've missed you all day, and so kind of managing that. I think personally I probably did a poor job of shedding that expectation of, you know, the certain lifestyle before having kids to having kids. And I think that could have been managed a lot better, where maybe it was just a matter of, like, putting myself in a mindset, like taking 5 minutes before I step through the door to, like, prepare myself for that, and to kind of ground myself where those things are not coming at me as something that's like fighting with where my mind wants to be, but rather I'm putting myself in that place where I'm welcoming it because it's good, right? It's good. It's nothing to do with the kids, like they're something that they're doing that's wrong. It's the mindset of, like, oh, I don't have time for this. I need my, you know, I need to decompress or something. But, like, just, yeah, learning to maybe take a little bit of time of conscious thought and effort to prepare better for that, so that it's not hitting you so much as like, you know, you're welcoming it, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you want to take that one?
Yeah, a little bit, little thoughts. The question assumes that you have regrets. And I think if you're entering into this, most of you probably here are seeking beauty, truth, and the best for your family. That's why you're choosing homeschooling. And I think if you're all in, you're going to make mistakes. Everybody, when you reach our stage in life, you're going to be able to look back and find all kinds of things you could regret. But there's nothing you can do about it to change it. All you can do is learn from it and look to the future with it. So looking back and saying, I wish I could have changed, I don't think I would want to change anything, because it was part of my path. When we fail, it's an opportunity for holiness, right? We can come closer to Christ and lean on Him. And those are all part of His plan for us. And so, no, it's God's perfect plan, because, you know, He'll take evil, not necessarily evil, but bad things that happen to us, and make good of them. if we allow him, right? So.
Thank you. All right, so I'd like to wrap up soon. You guys must be tired. So there is a question here that I'm going to read out loud, but I would say whoever asked the question, maybe we could direct to Hester or to Maria. So the question is, how do you have meaningful discussions about books if you do not have time to read the book? So Maria addressed some of that. Because I think we have to sort of scoot through these. The male role in homeschooling household, we really did covered a lot of that already. How do you balance kindness and discipline? I'm going to not do this question just because it's already 4:30 and it's a big question, and I think you guys have answered many components of it in your answers. But it's a whole topic unto itself, balancing kindness and discipline, right? And the last question is, if you and your wife are both introverts and you have a lot of kids, how do you create balance so you both aren't burnt out and bitter? I don't know if that doesn't apply to us. You're not an introvert, I wouldn't guess. I don't know. You're a closet introvert, okay. Would any of you put yourselves in that category where you and your wife are both introverts? Okay. So if we can just give a 1-minute answer, so if you and your wife are both introverts and you have a lot of kids, how do you create a balance so you both aren't burnt out and bitter?
I'm not sure I have an answer for that.
You're not going to answer? It's hard. That's fair.
I
Okay,
think
so Jake's not going to answer that.
I think you need to be like as an introvert. Like, let's say, you know, obviously it's a wide, complex thing, but boiling it down to, say, somebody who needs like a decompression time or whatever. Like, you need to be conscious of when you have that need, and so also being that support for your spouse when they need it too. Like, I feel like, I don't know if this is just sort of a universal thing, but I feel like when a lot of the time when I need it, Marianne doesn't necessarily need it, and when she needs it, I don't necessarily need it, and so there's a synchronicity in some ways when we can provide that opportunity for the other to go and have their space if they need. I guess I would say if you're conscious of it and you see it as an important thing for yourself and your spouse, then you will learn to watch for those times when either they need it or you need it, and being able to like actually communicate that with each other. Then that provides the other with the opportunity to, you know, step in and give you that time, if that's what you really need. Also, just like soaking up the time when all the kids are in bed.
Yes.
and not just like, you know, losing yourself in like the duties that are left, but just making some like real quality time.
I guess the only thing I would say is it's okay to say no to things. Sometimes there's a lot of opportunities to take on activities and events and commitments, and it's okay to say no to some of them.
That's good advice, Jake. Thank you.
I'd just like to give a little boost to introverts. So my son Jacob was the one that really taught me about introverts. I honestly can say I didn't quite understand before that, but he taught me. And I have come to learn that our world as it is, the world we have now, tends to value extroversion more, I would say. Bigger and louder and out there more is valued more than thoughtful, than being attentive to details, to noticing things, right? And the thing I've learned over the years, in more recent years, is the beautiful gifts that introverts bring to the world. And I'm almost embarrassed to be an extrovert now. It's true, there's a lot. And for you introvert parents, there's maybe things too, that your circuits get blown earlier and things like that. But you bring an enormous gift to your children. And don't ever think that you don't.
Thank you, gentlemen. So the takeaway from all of this is introverts are people too. But can we give our dads a big hand? A great range of ages, but also a really great range of personality types and temperament. You know, this was really wonderful. So thank you guys for your time. A couple of quick announcements. We will pray the rosary right now.